Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started shortly. Are we all ready to go?
We are.
Excellent. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session in our Woodland Conference mini-series of 2021. My name is Don Cameron, and I'm a regional forester with the Department of Lands and Forestry based in Truro. It's my pleasure to be your MC this evening. We'll begin our event by acknowledging that we are in the Peace and Friendship Treaties territory signed with the British Crown in 1725. The land on which we live, work, and play is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq and Wabanaki Confederacy people. May we live with respect on this land and in peace and friendship with its people, the original stewards of Nova Scotia's natural resources. I'd like to introduce the conference mini-series to you. It's a variation of our annual Spring Woodland Conference series for those of you that have been to our conferences in the past. Despite the pandemic, we're pleased to be able to continue to offer interesting and educational presentations this year in a new online format. Hopefully, it will be safe again next year so that we can meet in person for next year's conferences. In the meantime, we hope we are staying safe and healthy during these challenging COVID times. A little bit about the WebEx AV setup, the platform we're using here. You as participants are automatically muted and your video is turned off automatically for the benefit of the presentations. Your names are invisible to each other, but we can see them here as event organizers. There will be opportunity for you to ask questions throughout after each presentation. There's a Q&A panel on the upper right side of your screen where you can post your questions. All you have to do is click on the arrow beside the Q&A. You'll be able to forward questions for one presenter or both. I will read the questions out to the speakers and they will answer the questions verbally. Now, we may not get to all the questions during the time allotted, but our goal is to send out answers after the session today to any questions that are not answered tonight. We will be polling some questions. They will appear on the right of the screen below the Q&A section. You'll notice that we've just put a polling question up for you to respond to. If you would please check that and respond now. Please note that in case you would like to go back and review some part of this event, or if you know of someone interested who is unable to be with us today, this event is being recorded and will be posted online for future viewing. The link for these recorded sessions will be available at the nswoods website. Again, that's nswoods, NSWOODS website. Also, we will send out an email letting you know where and when they are available. We're famous for our chainsaws. At the end of the conference mini-series, we will have 2 lucky draws for 2 steel MS362 chainsaws purchased from the Tractor Dome in Milford and S.J. McCrae & Son in Bedeck. You as participants will receive 1 ballot in your name for each of these sessions you attend. More info to come later on that. By the way, for tonight's event, we had 176 people register. Of course, are likely to be able to be here, but just to give you an idea of the numbers that registered. Today's speaker bios and any speaker handouts that they may have will be available through the NS Woods website also in the coming days. The format of tonight. Each presenter will speak one at a time, followed by a Q&A period, and tonight's event will run till 8 p.m. The agenda for this evening. We're happy to be able to offer this special COVID version of the Woodland Conference series. For those of you who are regulars at our annual conferences, you may recall that we create agendas for each session based on feedback we receive from you, the participants. So that's my first plug to get your feedback at the end of today's session. Our 2 presenters today are always popular choices. A recent WOYA winner, WOYA standing for Woodland Owner of the Year Award, Norman Stacy Paupin with the Woodlot in Shinnemacast with this year's winner, and Dave Sutherland of the Association for Sustainable Forestry. Our first speaker is Norman Paupin, who, along with his partner Stacy, own and manage a woodlot in Shinnemacast, Cumberland County, and they were awarded the 2020 Woodland Owner of the Year Award. I had the pleasure of working along with Norman Stacy as we planned and held an enjoyable, despite slightly pandemic-modified version of a public field day on their woodlot October 3rd this fall. Norm's presentation is entitled, Welcome to the 100-Acre Woods. Norm, the floor is all yours.
Norm, are you okay there? We can't hear you. Don, do you have audio?
Yes.
All right. We seem to have some technical difficulties. Dave, would you mind going first?
I should be unmuted there.
Oh, there. Oh, there's Norm.
There you are. Yeah.
Okay.
It was showing me as unmuted on my end, but I guess I had to re-click it. Let's just try this again. Did I lose my sharing of
Yes,
screen?
I just changed that. Thought it might help. You should be good to go now.
All righty. All is well.
Yep. Give her.
Sorry about that. For some reason or other, my unmute button was showing unmuted on my end, but not on the in the actual presentation. So I was asked to do this presentation. Christy had asked me what I wanted to title my presentation, so this is what I came up with, which was the 100-Acre Woods. It's kind of funny because my wife would always ask me, you know, I was going to the woodlot, so that's what I tell her. I'm just going to go play in my 100 acres woods. So it's kind of where it was off the cuff, so that's what we went with. Oops, I'm not actually sharing. There. Can somebody give me a heads up of whether my screen is sharing and you have audio?
Yep.
Yep, all good, Norm.
All right. All right. Geez, this is rougher than I thought. All right, so we'll get on with our presentation. Yeah, so the 100 Acres Woods, this is where the kind of the title came, was just kind of off the cuff, and when you make me do decisions on the last minute, this is how it happens, I guess. So our woodlot's actually in Mount Pleasant in Shinnemacas in Cumberland County. It's not actually 100 acres, it's 110 acres. Just a little fun fact on that too. My middle name is actually Christopher, so we can continue with that theme of the Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin, of course. But we'll get into this actual presentation. So we purchased the lot in 2012. So it's been 8 years. As you can see, this is the Route 6, which is coming Pugwash is over this way. Amherst is in that direction. Our access is actually on Mount Pleasant Road, which is this roadway right here. So you can see in the blue, the darker blue, kind of looks like a landing strip across the middle of it. It's actually the natural gas pipeline bisects our lot right across the middle. And if we are accessing, we actually come in through the roadway that's right here along that outside line. So that's kind of the woodlot, what it looks like. Is kind of sandwiched between the Route 6 and Mount Pleasant Road. It's fairly flat. It's fairly not real wet, but it has wet spots. Kind of the water drainage is kind of down the center of the lot. So right across the middle of the pipeline, there is a small water course that's there. So we have to be careful around. And there's also some water laying around the front of the property in that area. We do have pretty good access with the roadway, which is what we kind of spent time on at the very beginning, was getting the roadway in. So we started off from this point, and the road follows right along the line. And as you can see, it shows right up in the map here, cuts across the back and comes back down to the pipeline. There's a roadbed that continues on, but I haven't actually cut that out and opened it up. It's all grown in, but the roadbed is still in place. I didn't feel like having traffic kind of running around the woodlot, and that gave me pretty good access all the way around because I can run down the pipeline or I can go follow the road and have fairly good access to our woodlots. So that's kind of the highlights of what it looks like from a mapping perspective. So fairly flat. We do have the pipeline cutting across it, and the roadway is kind of what we spent the first few years actually working on, was getting it that I could actually get onto it, get access to the lot. In this area, water was running across the road, so we rented the little mini excavator, did some ditching, put in the culvert to replace the culvert that was there to get the water draining. So I've done that a few years or a few times over the years where I rented the mini excavator, did a lot of the work myself, and just kind of ditched and fixed up the culverts to try and get the bed raised enough to keep the roadway at least dry enough to get on. Of the road, so coming back down towards the pipeline, and as you can see, we kind of worked along the edge of the roadway. For the first 3 years or so, we actually accessed all of the firewood and stuff because primarily that's what we bought the woodlot for, was firewood, and some of exercise for me as well, because of course doing all of this, dragging it out, cutting, it's great exercise. So that's kind of what the roadway looks like. Keep it mowed out. And the first 3 years basically was cutting out the road and pushing everything back, anything that was leaning onto the roadway, trying to open it up to get some light, get it dried off so we could actually use it and get in there. If it's a wetter time of year, I wouldn't probably be able to get up there with the truck without making a mess, but it's pretty good most of the time. Back, this is in the fall. Again, you can kind of see what the roadway looks like. It's not gravel or anything, it's just the materials that are there. But it's fairly good access for our needs. Winter shot here. This was actually last weekend. We went up for a little snowshoe through the roadways and through some of the trails. I got my wife to take her camera along, so she just snapped a couple of shots. So this is looking from the pipeline, looking down that roadway. So again, depending on the season, everything looks a little bit different, but you can see the fairly young stand. The whole lot was cut in the 90s on the front portion of the lot. The center was clear cut in a section of it in 2011. So just prior to us purchasing it, the last piece was cut. This is looking down across the pipeline. As you can see, we do have some snowmobilers that have been using the pipeline access. Earlier this year, we put in a bridge. This is that water course that kind of runs down the center of the property. When they put in the pipeline, they created a raised section here and made a drainage spot. The four-wheelers and stuff like to go through it. It's fairly deep. During the summer, it does dry out, but there are other times of year where water is flowing through it constantly. So I do have my small machine, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that I do use to extract wood with. So I wanted some way to get through this without making a mess. So we built a little bridge, and the skidoers are actually using it because the bridge is right in this location. So they've been actually using it to travel across as well. So wasn't the plan or intention, but it works both ways. And I'd rather they use that than and the four-wheelers use the bridge rather than destroying that nice little drainage. And they have some logs on the side to retain it. And it was really well done when they actually did the remediation. Another shot of around the pipeline, just some of the trees in the fall. Some of these pictures are from my wife. She likes to go up and do some photography. So this is one of her shots, just to give you an idea of the lot and what it looks like. Again, we have a mix and just kind of work with what we have there. And you'll see in the next shots what we've been actually doing. So again, we were snowshoeing last weekend. This is one of the trails that I've cut through that we were walking down. You can kind of see what we've been doing. I've just been thinning things out, extracting firewood, leaving the larger, more healthy trees, trying to thin out the understory and get light in, get some stuff growing, trying to leave a mix of whatever was there in that area and just trying to see if we can actually get a little bit of improvement. An area that I haven't touched yet, so you can kind of see how dense it is. Again, it changes and varies depending on where we're at in the lot. But you can see that there's tons of stems, way too many. They're not all going to make it. So all we've been doing is trying to help things along. So I'll go in with the clearing saw or the chainsaw, and if I can extract anything for firewood, taking out the poor quality stuff and trying to leave the better things to actually grow and see if we can improve the value. Again, my wife likes to take pictures, so this is a couple of shots of hers. We do have some porcupines. They do a good job at thinning for me, although they like taking the stuff that I didn't necessarily want to take out, but I guess that's what we got to work with. So again, there's lots of wildlife on the lot. I've seen coyotes, partridge, rabbits, deer, bear, yeah, you name it. There's woodpeckers, a little bit of everything. Here's another shot up front of an area that I was working in. As you can see on my machine, it's a lot of the poorer stems, or in the case of the maple where it grows in clumps, trying to leave the best stem, and then I'll take out all the rest, trying to get a little bit of light in, start some regen on the ground, and trying to give room for these stalks to actually start filling in and put some size on, and trying to just do a little bit of improvement. And the picture alongside here, of course, is our lady slipper, and it just happened to be on this trail where I was coming out. I just happened to notice that they were growing in an area I didn't even realize they were there. We found a whole section of them. So again, there's all kinds of things happening, which you never know unless you're there at the right times. So this is my fancy machine. Again, the first 3 years, extraction was pretty easy. I was just working along the road, just cut it, and the truck was right there. Now we're starting to work into the woods a little bit further, so I had to figure out a way to truck some stuff out. We looked into, I do have a farm tractor, but it's not very conducive to working in the woods. We do have the four-wheeler. The four-wheeler's not that great neither, and the trailers, you start getting pricey. So what I did is I built this little unit. I used my power pack off of my wood splitter. The back wheels are driven by a couple of hydraulic motors. There's just 2 valves. It articulates right here in this middle point. That's my steering. I did put a little bit of a helping hand and a crane onto it just to kind of help with the bigger stuff. It's pretty light, it's cheap, and it gets the job done. It's not pretty, but it's effective. probably a couple of $1,000, and I threw this all together and have something that I can actually truck up my firewood with. I probably used it for the last 5 or 6 years. This is just some of the firewood that would have got trucked out. We do about 7 or 8 cord a year of firewood that I pull off the lot. So, and most of it's come out on this machine in the last number of years. So. This was at the field day. Again, it tends to draw a little bit of a crowd. And in my opinion, it's nothing real fancy. It just gets the job done, and it's simple, basic, a little crude, but does the work. Of course, looking at the woodlot, not only from a timber perspective, but also what else can we do with this? Of course, my wife likes the maple syrup and stuff. We don't have sugar maples. We do have reds, so we kind of looked up a little bit about that, and we can make syrup with them as well. So this is a lovely shot that my wife had done with their camera, of course, sitting there waiting for the drop to fall off of the actual tap. So we do collect a little bit. We've tapped a few trees. In this picture on the left, this is a small booster pump filter unit, and then these are our O membrane or reverse osmosis. They're able to filter out water and leave the sugars for the actual sap go through. So if you look, we have raw sap coming in this bucket. In this bucket is pure, clean water. And in the smaller bucket or pail is concentrated sap. So we can get rid of about 50 or 60% of the water, which most of the major maple operations are using nowadays. This is just kind of a cobbled together homeowner style. So we played around with a little bit of technology out there in some RO. Mostly wasn't for the maple syrup, actually. We've also played a little bit with the birch. So we've tapped some of the birch trees. These are grays in this particular picture, but I do have some white birch on the property. We've tapped either one, and we can actually make syrup out of that as well. This is where the RO comes in really handy. Your maple trees are closer to 3% sugar. When it comes to birch, we're closer to the 1%. Actually, we're probably less than 1. We're probably about 0.8, 0.9. So there's a lot more water to get rid of. With a lot more water to get rid of course, the RO comes in really handy at getting rid of that water fairly easily, just pumping it. The other issue we do have with the birch is the fact that the sap or the syrup is very temperature sensitive, so it is not a good idea. So we've been playing around with that for the last few years, trying to learn a little bit more about it and how does it work. Is it viable? Ran across this doing some research. There was an actual conference in upstate New York put on by Cornell University. Paul Smith's college is part of Cornell. The head of Maple Research was the one that actually organized this. So the wife and I took a little trip to upstate New York in 2015 and sat in on this. It was supposed to be an annual thing, but I think it's the only time it ever happened to my knowledge. I don't think they ever ran it again. So that was an interesting learning, a little bit of a upstate New York vacation. Some more experimenting. This is in our kitchen, and yes, my wife actually put up with me doing all of this fun stuff in our actual kitchen. So we have a vacuum pump. We were actually boiling some of the birch sap under vacuum, which you can reduce your boiling point of your liquids, so the water will boil at a much lower temperature. So the fact that the syrup is temperature sensitive, the pump didn't like the vapor or the steam coming into it, so I had to make a condensing unit. Yeah, I know it looks like a still in the kitchen, kind of is, but we were actually doing syrup. So nothing of the illegal type. Just trying to figure out how can we actually produce this without overheating it and making a nice light syrup. Funny enough, the first time I put it all together, she kind of looked at me very strangely. By the end of it, she was actually operating all of this and producing some. So this was just kind of some experimental things, just playing with it, see if you can do it. Trying to do a little bit of learning along the way as far as how would this work? How would you be able to do it? Which actually turned into a little bit of a research project with Dalhousie University. We've done a few little projects with them and worked around with some vacuum evaporation. There's actually other applications for it. So again, it's funny how we can go out into the woodlot and do a few things, start thinking about things, and turns into all of these weird and wonderful experiments that lead into other things. This is kind of where we're at now. I'm still trying to figure out how would be, my lot's flat, how would we be able to collect the sap from the trees a little bit more efficiently rather than hanging a bunch of buckets. So this was last year's kind of experiments of some solar panels. The orange thing is actually one of those big bulk containers. So that's my reservoir, some batteries for energy storage. I had a pump in here and you can see the actual tubing on the side. So we're actually pumping or creating vacuum and sucking from the trees and collecting the sap. So we're, again, continuing to play and figure out some stuff. Do the economics make sense? Is this worthwhile doing? So we're still kind of learning and playing as we go, but these are some of the things that we've been toying with. So again, there are all kinds of opportunities. Thing we played with a little bit, we did take some red maple and some poplar. We've played around with the side of things. So this is from last year. We actually started getting some mushrooms grown, so some shiitake mushrooms on the red maple. The oyster didn't turn out very well on the poplar as of yet, maybe this year. Again, it was only a year in, so it does take a while to establish. So just a little bit of things that we've been kind of toying with. What are the opportunities? What things could we actually do? Which all culminated into this year's winning of the WOYA, or Woodland Owner of the Year Award. I guess all of these silly things that we've been doing is actually something that people are interested in. I know from our perspective was purely just trying to get firewood in the lot, trying to do a bit of improvement on the lot. What can we actually do with this piece of property? How can we improve the value? I guess it's was a recognizable endeavor so far. We were only 8 years in. There's still lots of work to do. And it's a continuing project from many, many aspects. And that's kind of the end of the road for me, I guess. There's 8 years and about a 15-minute time window. Is that good, Don? I was getting the warnings. I was trying to keep us on time. Sorry for the quickness of this, but
You did great, Norm. Thanks very much. I must say that the stuff that they have done, both unique aspects with the buggy, the birch syrup, and the other thing about them in terms of Woya is you have a typical woodlot, Norm, not gigantic old growth forest like some winners have had the luxury of having. You're starting from a fairly degraded woodlot and you're making the best of it and doing a really good job. So folks, I would recommend if you get a chance, you come make contact with Norm and Stacy and have a visit with them because there's a lot of ingenuity and smarts and good hard work going on there, so I'd recommend it. We're going to open up for questions now. The first question, Norm, just to get it going, as people start putting their questions forward if they'd like, is what you said, lightweight buggy. How heavy is your buggy?
I never put it on the scale, but from the back end side of things, I think each wheel on the back might have about 40 or 50 pounds on it. So the overall machine probably weighs, if it weighs 1,000 pounds, I'd be surprised.
And the width and length are what?
I was shooting for the 48 inches wide. I ended up around 52, and it's probably overall close to about 12 feet long. So
Right.
it's fairly maneuverable. That's what I was looking for, something that can zigzag between the trees and get in and out of places without having to make large trails. So.
And I can attest to that. A very narrow little, in fact, you really have to look sometimes to find the trails because they're so narrow. You can keep it as narrow as you want. Okay, any questions that anybody would like to pose? Nothing at the moment. That was having the photos and having the map and the descriptions. It's very clear what you're up to. So that was really well done and very helpful, I'm sure, to answer those questions in advance.
I'm not very good at all the wording stuff, so pictures are good with me, I know.
I think we all learn best by pictures. That was worth
Yeah,
that 1,000
visual
words.
learners.
There is some questions there.
Okay, questions.
Norm, what is the most rewarding thing you have done as a landowner?
Good question. I don't know. I just look at this place to go and kind of clear my head more than anything. It's more the mindless work, and again, I guess trying to shape it into something a little bit more, trying to see the improvements, making some of the changes, and again, we're learning as we go. Not really sure where it needs to go. It's purely trying to make the best of what's there, and hopefully we're improving things. So I guess that's my reward, is just trying to see things and making sure that it'll look healthy and trying to do the best we can with it.
Okay, the questions are coming in fast and furious. Norm, what does birch syrup taste like? How would you describe that?
Good question. What did you think of it, Don? Again, from my perspective, I guess I get jaded trying to do it, so I like other people's opinions more so than my own.
Yeah, well, I found it was different than maple, that it didn't have that maple flavor. I found it sweeter. I found it pure sweetness more
Yeah,
so than that maple flavor, I guess. And it's hard to describe. There, I didn't find like the mint, the mintiness. I didn't so much find
yeah.
it minty like you might think it would, but very sweet
And
and very satisfying.
yeah, it's a different sugar. It's a fructose base rather than sucrose. So, and it has a different chemistry to it altogether, which is why it's not the same. It's not trying to imitate it. It's very much a different product.
And I think that for those of people that are involved in maple syrup, the interest might be that you don't have to. It's very easy to burn birch syrup if you heat it. That's you made that point clearly, but it's really the system you're doing is preventing that from happening. So the quality control is much higher, isn't it?
Yeah, lots of learning.
Next question. Did you happen to make a YouTube video while building your buggy?
No, actually, I didn't think about it. It was done over a couple of winters. I started it at one winter and then continued on. I do have kind of successions of pictures of kind of stuff that went together, but no, I didn't actually record the whole process. It was
But
kind of
I'm sure,
my winter projects, yeah.
and you being a teacher and a mechanical whiz, I'm sure you could teach other people by explaining what you've done or showing them what you've done. Next question. How much syrup do you produce every year?
We're not into production a whole lot. It's more so we do enough for ourselves, and that's about it. Right now, it's trying to figure this out. Somebody basically told me along the way that we'd never be able to do it commercially, so that's kind of where my path is right now, is trying to see, does this make commercial sense to actually scale it up? So working with Val, doing these little experiments, it's all just gathering data and trying to see, okay, does this make sense, or is it just a neat novelty? And that's very much where we're at with it at this point. I think there's lots of potential, but there are some things to answer and figure it out. Temperatures issues from processing it to even collecting it, because it's after the run that the birds run. So there's collection issues, there's all of this stuff. So it's not in the bag yet, but it's possible. So it's very much this is what all this is about, is slow steps and learning as we go.
And with that in mind, do you or have you a management plan? Who did it, and what is your long-term plan?
So yes, we are a member of Athol Forestry Co-op in the Amherst area, and work with Craig, our forester there. So syrup is some of it, just a lot of improvement. Again, we do have a detailed plan on that, yes.
And you do all the woodlot yourself, all the woodlot management work yourself?
Yeah, any of the silviculture work and stuff so far has been myself, chainsaw and clearing saw and the little buggy, and just keep plugging along. I even rent the mini excavator and did all the road work and stuff myself as well. So
Excellent.
yeah.
And the last question is, how much time generally do you spend on the woodlot per week?
Uh, Usually we're up there every Saturday morning is usually what I do. We are off in the summer. Summer isn't the greatest time to be working in the woods, but it is my time off. So basically Saturdays, holidays during the summer. So we're probably averaging at least a day or two a week in the woods.
Excellent. Well, Norm, I'm afraid we're out of time there, so we'll have lots of time for Dave. So thank you very much for that presentation. I would encourage people to follow up with you. I know how welcoming and how good you are at spreading the word and helping others. So thanks very much.
Yeah, not a problem, Don. And like I say, Christy has my contact information. If anybody does want to have a chat or anything, we're available.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay. Our second speaker is well-known forester and manager of the Association for Sustainable Forestry, Dave Sutherland. Dave's presentation is called Silviculture and Biodiversity Features, a Landowner's Approach. Dave has been involved in the industry for many years. He's got great experience both on the ground, in the boardroom, wherever he's needed. And Dave, we're very glad to have you along, and the mic is all yours.
Thank you very much, Don. I'll just get my file uploaded here. There, can we see and hear everything?
All good, Dave.
Great. All right, well, it's very nice to be with you this evening. My name is Dave Sutherland, and as Don mentioned, I'm the coordinator of the Association for Sustainable Forestry. And tonight I'm going to be talking with you about our silviculture program and also a little bit about biodiversity and what woodland owners can do on their private woodlots to enhance that. But first of all, I'd like to congratulate Norman Paupin and his family for winning the Provincial Woodlot Owner of the Year Award. It's no mean task to win that. And as Norm and others who have won the award before know, it's a great deal of work. And so congratulations again to the Paupins for winning. So the subject matter that I'm going to cover tonight is quite extensive. And so this is going to be nothing more than a very quick flyby of the material. And as always, if anyone has questions that they'd like to direct to the ASF, we're just a phone call away. So feel free to do that anytime you'd like. So we're in our 20th year of operations. We started back in 2001. Originally, we began as part of the Registered Wood Buyers program as an alternative to obtaining silviculture through the regular Registered Buyers program for folks that either could not obtain silviculture funding or for some other reason were unable to get that. The ASF was instituted by private landowners and by the forest industry and by government, sort of a triad approach. And the program is still very healthy, if not healthier, 20 years along. So as I said, our main purpose is to provide silviculture opportunities to landowners of private woodland here in the province. And our program has changed fairly significantly since 2010, in which year that we really tried to turn it on with regards to some of the silviculture treatments, such as commercial thinning and some multi-age management, which have been really highlighted just lately in the 2018 Leahy report. So it's good to see that some of the work we've been doing all along is work that Professor Leahy has recommended in his report. And we're privileged to have a board of directors which includes not only private woodlot owners, but the forest industry reps at all. That's an important mix to have. So Our clients over the years have varied. Originally, in 2001, we only offered incentives for small private woodlot owners. In other words, those who owned less than 2,000 hectares of woodland. Of course, that included many, or 8 to 10 landowner groups, such as the co-ops and others, who immediately were on board with our incentive program. Since that time, we've instituted a large non-industrial owner incentive, of which there are over 40 members now, and these folks are large landowners who have between 2,000 and 20,000 hectares of land, but do not have an operating wood facility. And our third client really is going to be with us until the end of March. We do have an incentive in place for the single ultra-large landowner who owns more than 20,000 hectares here in the province. So some people ask about our funding sources, and until this year, all of our funding came to us through the Nova Scotia Department of Lands and Forestry, and that's roughly worth $1.9 million a year. And I'm happy to say we have a 3-year agreement in place with the department that will keep us undertaking silviculture until July 2023. The other significant funding source is the newly instituted Forestry Innovation Transition Trust, and that has provided the ASF with $3.5 million in silviculture funding, which will be ending the 31st of March of 2021. So I'm just going to do a quick description of the silviculture treatments which the ASF currently funds. First is fill planting, and fill planting is done as a treatment to bring the minimum stocking level of an area up to at least 80% stocking. So fill planting, as long as you plant more than 300 seedlings on an area, that would qualify as fill planting. And fill planting is a great addition to uneven age management, where folks may have different stands of different ages or multi-age stands on their woodlots, and fill planting can add that extra bit of regeneration that they might need to provide another age class. Second treatment that really is just a recent addition to our repertoire is full planting. And full planting has only come along just recently as a qualified treatment with the ASF, because up till now the registered buyers have largely been looking after the fill planting or the full planting. But with the closure of Northern Pulp and the areas that needed to be planted as a result of the demise of their program, full planting was allowed to be carried out through the ASF. Another treatment that we carry out and provide funding for is early competition control. And this treatment is done in areas where there is natural stocking or planted trees. And really it's done to minimize the amount of competition, both surrounding the crop trees or overtopping the crop trees, and allowing them more space and light to grow. And our early competition control incentive is only offered for manual treatment. So folks that do this treatment usually do it with a clearing saw or a brush saw, and provide extra space and light for the planted or natural trees that they wish to use as their crop trees. Next is pre-commercial thinning, and this is by far the most popular treatment that is offered by us that folks like to take advantage of. There's been a lot of harvesting work done in Nova Scotia in the past, and a lot of sites are, anywhere between 15 and 30 years old, let's say, and qualify for pre-commercial thinning. And this is done in stands to reduce the density of the of the stand. It can be done in hardwood or softwood. And I will say that there is a height requirement for pre-commercial thinning in both softwood and hardwood. For softwoods, it's 2 to 7 meters. And in hardwoods, it's 6 to 9 meters, just to allow hardwoods that extra height to reduce side branching, epicormic branching, so that the wood quality will be maintained throughout the growth of the tree. So pre-commercial thinning is undertaken in both plantations and in natural stands. And this just with the Forest Innovation Transition Trust this year, we were able to do pre-commercial thinning on more than 1,500 hectares of small private woodland. So that is a very popular treatment. Next is commercial thinning, which is a treatment done once a stand has reached commercial size. In other words, wood products can be harvested from it. And it's exactly as it sounds. The trees are thinned. The trees that are cut, a lot of them will qualify as forest products and be sold in the marketplace. And the trees that are left have an incentive to grow in diameter, because when you're trying to grow sawlog quality trees, whether it's hardwood or softwood, diameter is everything. So commercial thinning is done to put on more tree diameter. Next is our one of our more popular treatments in years gone by, and that is selection management or uneven age management, in which at least 3 age classes of trees need to be present in a stand before you undertake this treatment. The main purpose of the treatment is to harvest trees out of the stand so that the trees that are left to grow will both regenerate to form a new crop and as well put on additional growth themselves. So selection management removes trees from almost every age class in the stand, so that you start with an uneven age stand, and at the end of the treatment, you still have an uneven age stand. So selection management, very popular. Next is crop tree release. And crop tree release is really adding value to individual crop trees that might be scattered through a stand on your woodlot or throughout your woodlot. You find the trees that you wish to cultivate to grow as crop trees. Usually they're mature by the time you find them and decide to grow them further. And crop tree release just releases the crowns of these crop trees, so that once the crowns grow in diameter and size, that in turn translate to a greater diameter in the trunk. And crop tree release seems to be a very popular treatment in the last 2 to 3 years. In conjunction with this final treatment that I'm going to talk about, crop tree pruning, in which the lower 5 meters of a tree can be pruned. The limbs are removed so that the crop tree will yield a better quality sawlog in the future. So that was just a quick rundown of the silviculture treatments that we currently fund. And our website has got all the criteria and the standards and the rates. If you want to go on our website, all the information is there. And if you have any questions about the silviculture treatments, please don't hesitate to contact us. Some folks ask us about the silviculture monitoring. What do we do to ensure that treatments that are done are up to standard? Well, for folks that haven't done certain treatments in the past, we like to contact them and do an immediate field visit with them, so that even before they start the treatment, we can give them a little bit of hands-on instruction and show them what the end result should be like. And we like to sometimes follow up while the treatment is going on to ensure that things are going according to specification. We also have our own internal monitoring program, in which staff looks at least 30% of the jobs that we fund every year, which is a fairly high rate of monitoring, but we like to do that to ensure the quality of the treatments. And of course, after we're finished monitoring, when we submit all of these silviculture jobs to the Department of Lands and Forestry, they have their own silviculture monitoring follow-up that they do. And if there are any problems, we try to get those resolved as quickly as possible. So one of the things I should mention is that a couple of the treatments that we fund, commercial thinning and selection management, require pre and post-treatment assessments. Now, the pre-treatment assessment process has been developed by the folks in Department of Lands and Forestry, and they spent a lot of time putting this information together, and they've done a great job. So I'd like just a tip of the hat to them, and the fact that the pre and post treatment assessments have to be done for commercial thinning and selection management, I think speaks volumes to the work of the department. So what a pre-treatment assessment will tell you, it will confirm the type of prescription that you're making for the stand. It will also give you an idea of what the wind throw hazard might be, because we all know what wind throw looks like here in Nova Scotia. We're stuck out like a thumb into the North Atlantic. So wind it's the most common natural disturbance in the province. So wind throw hazard is a very important part of the assessment. As well, pre-treatment assessment will look at the soil and indicate the level or potential for soil compaction and rutting hazards. And then we ask that the qualified people that carry out these PTAs, and they're certified by the province, submit that data electronically to us, and then we in turn pass it on to the department. A couple of notes with regards to our funding. The department sets the funding boundaries for the ASF through the agreements which we have with them. And so just as an example, in our current annual agreement that goes through till next July, we have to ensure that at least 30% of our budget is spent in the 7 western counties of the province. We have to ensure that around 30% of the budget at least is spent on the category 6 and 7, these commercial thinning and selection management type treatments. That's a standard that the province holds us to. And another bit of a constraint that the ASF deals with that perhaps the registered buyer programs don't have to deal with is that in natural pre-commercial thinnings, there has to be a minimum of 25,000 stems per hectare to begin with. And I know that there are a lot of areas out there that can use treatment that have less than 25,000 stems, but because 25,000 stems per hectare indicates perhaps a pretty rich site and a higher rate, the ASF tends to inherit a lot of those jobs. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a very high demand for pre-commercial thinning, but this Forest and Innovation Transition Trust Fund has really assisted us this year with meeting the demand and clearing up some of the backlog. We had thousands of hectares of applications sitting idle until the Transition Trust Fund allowed us to clear up some of that work. In the last year in particular, because of the funding or because of the market constraints due to less of a pulpwood market, for instance, there seems to be less demand for Category 7 funding, which is the selection management, but that has to do with the quality of wood that's being harvested from those stands. And we've also noticed an increased demand or an uptick in the amount of commercial thinning applications that have been coming in. And this is because of a lot of work that was done in the 80s and 90s, planting stands and also doing pre-commercial thinning, so that these stands are now getting to the mature stage and qualify for commercial thinning. So there's a good amount of commercial thinning applications coming in to us every week. I should mention that through the ASF, we've already begun to implement some of what has been recommended in the Leahy report, including some of the ecological matrix type approaches. And we're looking at doing some multi-age shelterwood techniques. We're going to be putting in a proposal to the province for that. Another part of the Leahy report that seems to make very much sense is this results-based stewardship, where the end result is really what you're aiming for, and how you get there may not be as important. So results-based stewardship, I think, is a good thing. As it's been developing, we've been looking at the department publication, a silvicultural guide for the ecological matrix, and that's come in handy for a lot of the work that we're looking at doing. So to apply for funding from the ASF, it's a pretty simple process. Simply go onto our website. There's a funding request form. You just fill it out online and submit it to us. And then once we receive it and review it, we'll contact you and give you the go-ahead on some or all of the request. And then you would, at that time, submit the formal application form. And then at the end, when the job is completed, you submit a final claim form, and that can be done online as well. So if we have a minute, perhaps we'll try a polling question here. Has your woodlot received any silviculture or harvesting treatments in the last 5 years? Let's take a couple of minutes and answer that.
Dave, in the meantime, maybe I could ask a question of you. You mentioned earlier about 300 stems for fill planting. Did you mean 300 stems per hectare for fill
300
planting?
stems per hectare. That's correct, Don. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And what would you say you've seen over the years as far as changing of priorities for woodland owners? Of all the landowners you've visited with over the years, what trends have you seen to change in recent times?
There seems to be a trend towards more partial harvesting rather than clear cutting and planting approach. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think the more multi-age stands we have out there, the better, as long as they're healthy and wind firm and all that good stuff. So there seems to be more of a trend in that direction.
Right on, thanks.
Yeah. So will I just continue with this presentation as the poll goes on? Sure. So I do want to sort of give a shameless introduction to this particular home study module, which was just published by the Department of Lands and Forestry. And it's called Ecological Forestry, a Nova Scotia Approach to Woodland Stewardship. And what I'm going to be talking about in the next few minutes pertains to a lot of the content of this particular home study module. And I'd encourage anyone on this webinar, if you haven't already, enrolled in any of the home study modules, to do that. It's a very valuable way to learn about forest practices in Nova Scotia and the way we approach them. So I'll just put a plug in for the department there with regards to the home study courses. Just within the last few years, there's been a publication released called A Field Guide to Forest Biodiversity Stewardship. And this is a great little booklet, which if you can obtain a hard copy, it's a great booklet to take to the woods. It's got all kinds of information and photos in it, and it gives you a really good cross-section of the types of biodiversity features you would find on typical woodland here in Nova Scotia. So this is a great publication to get a hold of if you can. So I'm going to talk for the next few minutes about woodland biodiversity features and how landowners can approach them. Coarse woody debris, of course, is something that every landowner has found on their woodlot, and everyone knows that as a tree falls to the forest floor, it decays and becomes something a little bit different. It actually becomes a really valuable piece of wildlife habitat. So coarse woody debris is very valuable in regards to use by amphibians and insects, and even ruffed grouse who use the decayed logs for drumming and other types of breeding activity. Snags and cavity trees are something which everyone has seen on their woodlot. The image on the left is just a short little snag, obviously of a broken tree, and there happens to be a cavity in the base which adds to its biodiversity value. And I will say that hardwoods make much better cavity trees than softwoods, simply because the composition of the wood allows it to stay intact for a longer period. The image of on the right is a snag with some cavities in it, if you can see those cavities. And the fact that it's right on the edge of a wetland or a pond really adds to the value of this particular wildlife feature, because wood ducks will nest in the cavities of these trees, as well. Raptors, which are predatory birds, will perch in the tops of the snags and look for prey. Another type of feature that is important in Nova Scotia woodlots is this concept of vertical stand structure, where this intertwining of branches, twigs, leaves, and needles really provides a moderating climate and habitat for birds that are nesting there, or for insect species that are living in the canopies of trees. So vertical stand structure, if you can maintain that as much as possible on your woodlot, it seems to be a good thing. Everybody's heard a lot about old growth forests and old forests, and the Department of Natural Resources has their own scoring sheet for whether a forest actually has old growth attributes. So at least 30% of the trees in the stand should be at least 125 years old, and 30% of the trees, for instance, need to be of certain species, these long-lived species that contribute to old growth. And there are many other features as well, but old forest and old growth are very important to Nova Scotia woodlands and for habitat. Sometimes caves can be found on people's woodlots, especially if you've got bedrock that's close to the surface. So caves are found in bedrock, and they provide valuable habitat for species of bats, for other organisms such as freshwater shrimp and mole crickets, types of species that you wouldn't find in any other habitat. So this cave that I found in the Gully Lake Wilderness area it didn't have any bats in it, but it was a significant bit of habitat that could very well have provided habitat for bears and larger mammals at one time. Dens are sort of like smaller caves. They're usually not found in the bedrock, but are found under trees and under rocks and those kinds of things. Karst outcrops are outcrops of gypsum or dolomite or limestone, and it's easily eroded soil, and it's a very significant type of habitat here in Nova Scotia. Generally found in the Windsor area, and there's areas of outcrop as well up around Bedeque. Great blue heron nests in colonies. Very important, because great blue heron is a very vulnerable species, very vulnerable to disturbance. So any silviculture operations you have in the area really should be located a good distance from great blue heron nests. And if you've ever seen these, you'll never forget them. Once you've seen them, they're very oddly shaped nests. Wet forests, of course, are very significant habitat for a range of wildlife species. And here, of course, is a beaver pond, and beaver pond is just one type of wet forest. But vernal pools, you may have these on your woodlot. These are just sort of seasonal pools of water that are usually dry in the summer, and they provide all kinds of habitat for amphibians and insects and other animals which rely on this moist area in your woodlot. And the last wet area that I'd like to talk about are seeps and springs. Almost every woodlot has got seeps and springs on it. These are very fragile ecosystems which support all kinds of life. In fact, amphibians, frogs, and salamanders and others will hibernate in these wet areas during the winter, and the warm groundwater will keep seeps and springs open oftentimes all winter. So that's the end of my presentation, and this is our contact information. If you'd like to call us or drop us an email, you can do that right online through our website. And I want to thank you for listening tonight. It's been a pleasure being with you, and I'll pass this back over to Don.
Thanks very much, Dave. Very well done. We're a little bit into overtime now, but I have one question from somebody that gave it very early in the process. They had an early competition control treatment done about 20 years ago, and they're wondering, they think it needs PCT work now, and they're wondering, is that PCT fundable?
Yes, if the stand if the stand qualifies for pre-commercial thinning treatment, if it meets the height requirements and meets the density requirements, then yes, early competition control is a good segue years later to do a pre-commercial thinning.
I guess it's important for everyone to realize they have to meet those certain specs to be eligible. So that's where they need to get those details from you.
Absolutely, and our website is full of specs.
Good point. Yes, that's right. It's in the website, so anybody can have access to it. Well, thanks very much, Dave. You had to cover a lot of material. I mean, the silviculture and the ecological values, there's so much there, but it was a great overview and whets the appetite of a lot of people, I'm sure. So thanks very much for your time and effort.
Well, great. Thanks for having me tonight. Take care.
Okay. I would, in finalizing the event, I'd like to thank Norm and Dave very much for their time, effort, and good, useful information they provided. Good practical stuff. Because of the fact that we're only virtually together today, we're unable to present them with a thank you gift on your behalf, those of you that benefited from their experience and words. However, I can tell you that we will be forwarding a special sweet gift to them in the near future, again on your behalf. I want to make a plug for the WOYA, Woodland Owner of the Year Award. If either you, a family member, or another woodland owner you know of deserve to be nominated for consideration for the award, please do so. We'd rather have too many than too few. And we've had some wonderful landowners and woodlots over the years, and we'd like to keep that special program going and see a lot of you at those few. To finalize, I'd like to thank the women behind the scene with the technology, Liz and Christy. Thank you very much. They're in the truck, as they say in the NHL hockey games. They're in the truck making sure that things work and making the rest of us look good. So those glitches that always occur, you can't prevent some of them, like the one that Norm had that was in the system. But thank you very much, ladies. I'd like to remind everyone that this is the second in a series of at least 6 Wednesday evening mini-series sessions that will be running every 2 weeks. The next session will be March 10th and will be about invasive species and forest pests. And of course, there's a lot of forest pests that are on their way in this direction. The full mini-series schedule can be found at the NS Woods website. There may be additional sessions added at a later date as well. I should also let you know about another set of forest webinars being offered by the forest professionals in Nova Scotia. The next one, entitled Climate Change Adoptive Forestry, is scheduled for February 25th from 12 to 1 p.m. Again, see NS Woods for the full count. Conferences are We hold 2 draws for chainsaws at the end of the conference mini-series. All of you that participate in these events will be eligible. In fact, for every one of these mini-series events that you attend, you will have a ballot with your name on it that will go into the barrel for those 2 lucky draws. So the more events you take in, the better your chances of winning one of those new steel pro grade. I encourage you to complete our exit survey for each session you participate in, which also provides useful feedback, again, to us for future conference planning. So please complete the survey as you close down your browser. Before you close down your browser, please click on the Leave Event to get to the exit survey, and it only takes 1 or 2 minutes to complete. Your information will be kept private and not used for any promotional or commercial uses. Okay, well, that's it for now, everyone. We hope this was worthwhile use of your time and that you learned a lot. We look forward to our next session in 2 weeks, and we hope to connect with you then. Thanks, and take care of each other. Bye for now.